we're recording now, so we'll be having questions and answers at the end of the session. First, we're going to hear from Xavier for around 20-25 minutes and his presentation, and then we'll hear from Allo, her response, and then we'll have time for questions and answers at the end. And we'll finish at the top of the hour. So that's all it from me. Xavier, I'm passing over to you, please.
Okay, thank you. Well, good morning or good afternoon to everybody. I would like first to thank Rima and Dr. Wilkinson for giving this opportunity to present my ongoing work. I would like to thank also Prof. Coleman and Dr. David Gabin, because they organized a project about religion and urbanization in Africa 3 years ago. And this has given me the opportunity to discover Covenant University. It's a university represented today by Dr. Allo, my colleague. And I want to thank the public. I am Xavier Moyet and a researcher. So first, I made some changes to the presentation, slight changes. You may observe that. So the title is Trust and Public Health Communication During COVID-19 Epidemic, a Perspective from Niger. Niger, in fact, it's Lagos, more specifically. Another subtitle could have been Health Pluralism, because I want to look at the different paradigms of health. So Western public health and divine health, competition for public behavior. When I'm talking about divine health, it is more specifically about the way health is understood in some Pentecostal healing churches. So maybe what is best is to start with an image. And this image shows clearly why there is a strong disconnect between the official public health communication and the public practices. I stumbled on this image some weeks ago, and it was striking to me that, well, there is no connection whatsoever between this public communication and the behaviors on ground. And I would like to understand why it is the case. And my main hypothesis will use the concept of trust, trust in the public health system. So Lagos is certainly a very good space to observe this interaction, because it's characterized by a very dynamic religious life, and it's going to be the opportunity to decolonize a certain approach of public health. So to really understand in depth this trust or mistrust, distrust, it's good to remember the general context. First, the Western medicine came, and it was part of the colonial medicine. So it was at variance with the traditional views of religious views. I think it's very, very nice to understand how infodemic, as it is called sometimes, is working there. And we must have in mind that even in the past, I was discussing this with Dr. Allo earlier, there was a strong distrust of the public towards immunization, like it was the case in the early 2000s in the north of Nigeria about polio. So in the same light, it's important to understand how this is functioning. Nowadays, you even have more problems regarding the distrust with the potential connections between immunization and HIV, at least in the mind of the public, or sterilization. Another point would be, it would be interesting to connect this hesitancy or this unwillingness to get vaccinated, but not to focus only on the case of Africa, but to enlarge this, to look at this phenomenon of hesitancy from a global perspective, linking it to what is going on in the USA. I mentioned Tuskegee, it's an experiment that was done against some Black population. And it would be interesting to look also at the case of the rest of Africa. To investigate such a topic, I guess it would be very interesting to change our approach of public health or epidemiology. In the past, it was heavily relying on statistics and quantitative data, but it's possible to generate multiple approaches from the angle of social sciences. So history, sociology, medical sociology, or anthropology of religion or health healing, as it is my case. So in this case, the methodology will not be so much about quantitative data, but about qualitative data, inductive, coming from the field. So it's ethnographic from below. It's opposed to the normal way the public health communication goes from the top to the bottom. And certainly such an approach would be interesting also because we are coming at a time where there is an interest on the behalf of public health to understand the issues of cognition, religious identities, and the way it can connect with the behaviors towards immunization. So I mentioned the fact that public health arrived and it was then part of a colonial project. It was like a large package, and health was connected with education, with infrastructures, so roads, for instance. In this light, public health is not isolated, it's part of an ensemble. And within even the medicine, it's close to hospital, hygiene, vaccination. So we must remember also that within this paradigm, that is the second time I'm using the word, it's like the global worldview of this colonial science. And there was a strong opposition between science and superstition. Well, it could be, I could elaborate on this, it could be traced back to Enlightenment. But what we must remember is that this opposition, this epistemological opposition, was grounded in a certain scientism. So they believe that science is superior to a belief or a religious worldview. So now we must look at the public health nowadays and the way it connects with Western, with the Western, okay. So nowadays, this public health is heavily connected with Western science. It's heavily connected with the assistance and the aid influence. In this slide, the global south is seen within the context of international assistance. There are many evidences of this in the discourse, the scientific discourse, and the general idea that you can find into the press. So in this slide, Africa is provincialized or made subaltern, is a peripheric. There is this document. It shows clearly that European Union, together with the United Nations, is offering a response to COVID-19 in Nigeria. It's very telling to see that a huge sum should be devoted to this. On this document, they are talking about 50 million euros, which is a very large sum, but it has to be connected with the general mentality of aid assistance. On those documents, you can see on the left a tribune. It's called is calling for an urgent African plan to control what is going on with COVID-19. And on the other image on the right, you see this man is complaining, is saying that if COVID is still found in other places in the world, is going to leave Europe vulnerable. That's the term that is used. So from this perspective, it's not so much that Africa needs to be helped for itself, but needs to be helped for vulnerable countries like Europe. So I would like now to look at the reality on ground and to look at the statistical figures about COVID-19. In Lagos, which is the most populous state in Nigeria, we see that there have been 428 deaths. That was like on the 26th of March. I guess for the whole country, we are talking about 2,036 dead for a country where there is more than 200 million people. It begs also the question of the channels of communication. Mainly, the information is channeled through the big media like The Guardian, and like we saw earlier, the columns in the public space. So it's also problematic in this that local political elites have been contested recently, and they are involved in all sorts of tensions with the general public. But of course, we can have also our reservations about those figures, say that the reliability of a statistic is, well, to say the least, problematic. So The Guardian put it that way: the number of positive cases and fatalities from coronavirus in Africa could be higher than reported because of low testing and poor registration of death. Recently, to go along this line, there was a test, and 10,000 people were systematically controlled, and it was found that maybe 23% had been exposed previously to the virus because they are the antibodies. So it's very possible that the scale of the to COVID-19 has been minimized. And well, there is the potential of new variants. So I would like now to try to see why this public communication is so much distrusted. Maybe it has to do with communication channels. It was English that was used in the first instance that you saw in this photography. So I made it clear that there is a link with the colonial medicine, and this link with the hostile or foreign policy is seen as, of course, a threat. In this case, there is an externalization of the decision process, which is not inductive, it's not coming from the field. There is also the fear of experiments. Some months ago, some researchers in Paris said that, well, they may use Africa as a place to make experiments. Afterwards, there was a strong reaction and they said, no, 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 but and the harm was done already, and it's built up on the fear of sterilization, population control with Bill Gates that you can see that are rampant in the social media. Also, on the ground, it must be recalled that there are other conflicting priorities like HIV or Ebola, which are pandemic with viruses or malaria. Also, as I mentioned, the fact that the political authorities are not trusted at all. Recently, there was a strong problem in Lagos itself with people being killed. And they were unarmed and they were killed by the army. So by contrast with the authorities of public health, you can look at the Pentecostal mega churches and see that there is a strong intact capital of trust there. Even recently, there was Bishop David Oyedepo of Winners Chapel said that the church should not be closed because they are the best avenue for disseminating messages regarding public health, because people, they really trust the man in the pulpit and who is going to say something. I wanted also to look at the case of health and the way health is understood in the traditional religion, but also was understood in the Aladura or independent churches of the 30s, and nowadays in the divine healing configuration. So there is a conversation between those different groups. And you can see a continuity of the practices regarding healing. It goes against a prevalent narrative of breaking with the past. It gives the impression that the born-again people, they turn their ways absolutely for the past, but at least regarding this dimension of healing, it can be argued that there is a continuity. I just want to lay emphasis on the fact that healing in this context is holistic. It's not only about the physical body, it's not human-centered, it's not only about the virus, but it is something global, affecting as well the body, but the mind, the soul, the different dimensions, mental or social, of the human beings. Now I would like to look more precisely at the case of Christ Embassy. Christ Embassy is very interesting. I worked a lot of years on this church. My own PhD was about it, but recently it took position about the COVID-19, and I wanted to understand remember how it's working, remembering that there is a strong opposition between the church and the media is nothing new. Already in 2004, there was a strong controversy because Christ Embassy was advertising miracles, and the Nigerian authority for the regulation of media came against it. So in the case of this controversy about COVID-19, Pastor Chris reiterated his stand that was on the 1st of January. But what did he say? I just want you to understand this better. So, well, it was labeled a conspiracy theory about 5G, and it reinforces the narrative of a lot of people being really against religion. They see religion as being totally opposed to public health. And so in April last year, Pastor Chris linked the 5G with the COVID-19 and the New World Order. He teaches in a very didactic way. It makes his teaching stronger, as if he's in a school. He's using a board, and his church, by the way, is very cognitive. They lay emphasis on teaching as well as on healing. And his teachings, they are very controversial, and in UK at least, they were forbidden. It was not possible for him to broadcast them. Even he makes a case of 5G and as being, interacting with the nanotechnology that can be found into the vaccine. And he said recently that, well, you can find this in the Biblio, that it is not going to be possible to vaccinate everybody. Well, I guess he may have a point there, because it seems that the vaccination may be difficult to implement even in other spaces, be it in France. I'm French. I know that a lot of people, they are very cautious. Or America, like I think half of the Republicans, they are not willing to get vaccinated. Anyway, it's going to be difficult. So who is this Pastor Oyakilome, and why is it that I think it's interesting to look at in detail? Is the owner of a big mega church. He's very influential, and he has a lot of, he capitalizes, he has a lot of public trust. He's one of the foremost televangelists, and the presence of the church in the media is very important. He can even boast more than 10 million followers on the social media. So I think there is also one instance of a very negative article in the social media. It would be interesting also to look at other mega churches, because they have in common this problem of management of gathering during their meetings. These mass gatherings are, of course, very critical. Generally, the COVID or the illness is understood also in spiritual terms, often as a satanic plots. Recently, Dr. Allo forwarded a statement by Apostle Suleiman, and it would be interesting also to look at the geopolitics of religion in Nigeria, to look at the regional or religious tensions. Finally, I refer to another big televangelist, Pastor Adeboye, who says that only God heals. So how is it going to be possible to align public health priorities with Pentecostal and charismatic churches' discourses about health? Well, I hope future research will help towards this. But for this presentation, I want you to remind that public health did not work because there is an issue of trust or mistrust, and that the churches, they may bring some avenues. So thank you very much for your attention. Now there are a number of references here. If you are interested by the topic, I'm sure that you could find interesting things. Mainly it's like, blog and short articles. Everything is free. So,
very much, Xavier.
awesome.
Thank you for your presentation. So we will be able to, we can post the references on a page with the recording as well for people who want to look into detail. So what we'll do now is we'll pass over for around 10 minutes to Dr. Allo Tolulope. So Allo, passing over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Olivia, and thank you, Dr. Moyet, for your presentation. And I would like to also say hello to the rest of the team. Okay, I will first and foremost like to react quickly to an article that Dr. Moyet posted on the article's link. I was talking about that in the mail. That article kind of give me a head start about what this conversation is all about. If you can remember that article, Dr. Moyet, you shared the link in the mail. The article is about Pentecostalism, public health, and COVID-19 in Nigeria. Can you remember, Dr. Moyet?
Sure.
Oh, okay. So in that article, you said something that, first of all, really hit me hard. You said that Nigeria is a failed state, and that really hit me hard below the belt. But sadly, that is the truth, okay? And the truth is actually our leaders in Nigeria has failed the people. There is a lot of mistrust or distrust, like you put it, Dr. Moyet. People prefer to put their trust in a religious leader. If you look at what religion do, or one of the functions of religion is to try and help us to make sense of the unknown and mysterious happenings all around us, one of which is COVID-19 pandemic. So there is hunger in the land, there is poverty in the land, there is injustice everywhere, there is insecurity, and people do not trust the government at all. And secondly, the layman on the street, the conversation on the street, I tell you, when I talk about the street, I mean an average guy on the street, the woman that is selling pepper, the mechanic on the street, the cab drivers on the streets, they do not understand this English that we're speaking, but their conversation on the streets is about the fact that the government of Nigeria are actually benefiting from this whole COVID-19 pandemic. And I remember during your presentation, you made mention of the fact that when Nigeria actually declared a state of emergency about COVID-19, the Nigerian government received certain amount of funding from certain international organizations. For instance, you mentioned the European nations, the European Union, the EU, about 50 million euros, you said. Now, the argument on the streets is that, you know, the Nigerian government, they are not truthful about how this money is to be disbursed or to be spent, okay? And there's a lot of agitation among the population and people because of the, you know, the nature of the government and corruption and all of that. People prefer to trust the man on the pulpit, which supposedly, or which people believe hear from God, okay? And people or the adherents of this men of God believe that the judgments of this men of God are valid because, well, they hear from God. So now, in your presentation, Dr. Moyet, you were mentioning, you were speaking a lot about distrust or mistrust. And basically, I believe that the reason why there are a lot of mistrust among the people, or, you know, between the people at the grassroots and the government of the day, is because there is a lot of unanswered questions, particularly questions that surround COVID-19 pandemic. People are looking for answers, and the answers the government is supplying, people are not satisfied with the answers, okay? Now, and I also feel that because the Nigerian government have received some form of funding from international organizations, they began to dance to the tune of these international organizations. And you know that he who pays the piper dictates the tune, okay? Now, because of the fact that our government have received the largesse from international organizations, well, I may be wrong, but that is what I feel. I feel that they began to follow their dictates. And when Nigeria experienced the first COVID-19 prevalence, I think in 2020, in February, the action to shut down our borders was really, really low. And I want to believe that it was because of the fact that perhaps they're getting some, they are dancing to the dictates of some organizations, some Western organizations that have some vested interest in Nigeria, okay? Now, our government began to copy and paste all the policies and guidelines as regards COVID-19, you know, following what's the West, following what they are doing. For instance, at the point when our government was supposed to shut down the economy in order to reduce the spread of the virus, they did not. And immediately they realized that the West have started to shut down their borders. They started to copy the West. They started with shutting down borders. When the West declared a lockdown, our Nigerian government also declared the lockdown. So when during the lockdown, when the Western government started sharing palliatives, our government also started sharing palliatives. Okay, so I believe that because of the fact that they have already received some kind of funding from the West, they began to dance to the tune of the West, and they are not coming up with a satisfactory answer to the people. So that explains the mistrust. Secondly, I would like to say that our Nigerian leaders should have looked at the uniqueness and peculiarities of Nigeria when trying to respond to COVID-19 pandemic. And personally, I would like to say that, or I believe that in Nigeria, COVID-19 is not a public health emergency. Okay, in Africa and by extension Nigeria, COVID-19, really, we cannot say that it is a public health emergency. Now, going to your slide, I cannot remember the slide number now, but the title of that slide is something about delayed COVID vaccine for poor countries will leave Europe vulnerable. Now, the point I'm trying to make here is the fact that the reasons why these international organizations extend their allergies to Africa and to Nigeria is because of their own vested interest in Africa. And they are actually trying to protect themselves, okay? Why? Because they have political interests here. They also have economic interests here. They have businesses all around the place. And, you know, Nigerians also have businesses in the West. There is migration, immigration, and all of that. So to protect themselves, they are actually giving out and doling out monies so that we can actually control the virus. And by the time they are also able to get themselves together and trying to control the virus, there will not be a reinfection. That is my own belief. And I want to say at this point that I think that what our Nigerian leaders should, or the question the whole world really should be asking is, why is it that seemingly Africans are resistant to the COVID virus? If you look at the statistics, you know, the same way US and other countries in the West began to record the COVID-19, the spread of the COVID-19 virus, that was the same way we started too. Actually, it had to start with one person, and then somehow we were able to manage the situation. And but when you look at the statistics, for instance, I checked online yesterday and I saw that in Nigeria, for instance, I'm going to look at two African countries. I'm going to compare Nigeria and Ghana, and then also look at the US. For instance, in Nigeria, as at yesterday, there are 163,000 cases of COVID-19. Now, out of these 163,000 cases, 154,000 have fully recovered, okay? And we have 2,058 deaths. The same applies to Ghana. As of yesterday, when I checked online, I saw 90,946 cases of COVID-19. And out of these, 80,743 persons fully recovered and only 752 deaths. Now, when you look at the case of the USA, US have recorded 30.9 million cases of the virus and have recorded 556,000 deaths. Okay, now my question is, why is nobody asking this question that, why is COVID-19 not that prevalent in Africa? Do we really need a vaccine? Okay, do we really need a vaccine? Now, I think that is why people like Pastor Chris Oyakhilome is trying to call our attention that, hello, let us tread with caution. Why all the aid? And when you actually look at his postulations and his theories, his arguments on the YouTube, he was actually linking all of these happenings as happenings that are expected to happen at the end time, and that as Christians, we're in the end time, and we are not caught off guard. We're not surprised that these things are happening. Why? Because it has been written in the Bible, okay? And perhaps the mark of the beast want to come in through science and technology, okay? And or through public health, okay? And that best method through which the mark of the beast and through which the Antichrist is going to come is through the 5G network, which a lot of controversy is already around that. And then the COVID-19 vaccine. And then also is discussion about the vaccine is that the vaccine it was trying to discourage the Christendom, that no one in the Christendom should receive that vaccine. Why? Because there are more to it, okay? People need to do their findings, do their research, and people should exercise caution, and perhaps the government of the West might want to impose that vaccine on the global South and force people to take that vaccine. And he had predicted a lot about things that are currently happening. So, and he was trying to say that that vaccine has been a lot of concoction and codification has been engineered into the vaccine. And once you take the vaccine, the West can take control of your mind, and that is the beginning of the reign of the Antichrist. And you know, there are a lot of controversies here and there. And to tell you the truth, there are also, by contrast, other arguments from other pastors in Nigeria. And I tell you that some of these pastors do not actually support Pastor Chris's contention, okay? And Pastor Chris is actually angry about this, really, okay? He doesn't like the fact that Christians are docile, we are not asking questions, okay? And personally, I am a Christian, okay? And having listened to various arguments about the COVID-19, well, if you ask me if I'm going to take the vaccine, okay, I will say I'm going to also exercise some level of caution, because I will tell you that I also do not trust the government, okay? I would rather trust the pastor. Well, I believe that he hears from God, okay? He's God's mouthpiece, okay? So I will also like to tread on the path of caution. But what I would like to raise before I stop my response is the fact that I don't know if I'm the only one that is thinking along this path, that I think instead of international organization doling out money or giving vaccines out to low-income countries for free, I think they should start sponsoring researches in looking at why Africa is not experiencing the prevalence, why COVID-19 virus is not that prevalent in Africa. I think so, okay? And at the beginning of the pandemic, Melinda Gates made some assertions, which at that point might be valid considering the population of Africa and considering our infrastructure, okay, and considering our institutions. We have very weak institutions. Our population is huge. And actually, I was really, really afraid. I was really scared at the beginning of the pandemic because the COVID-19 guidelines and protocols are just too many, okay? And Africa, we are already battling with a lot of infectious diseases and diseases that has to do with issues of sanitation, okay? Now, with COVID-19, there's a lot of protocols that has to do with sanitation, washing of your hands.
Hello.
Okay?
Can I interrupt you? We are at
Okay,
the end of the time.
Oh,
We've gone
okay.
over time, in fact. So I do want to go to question and answers instead, and have time
Okay,
for
no problem.
Okay,
No problem.
sorry to interrupt. Please, we're open to questions and comments from the audience. If you go to the reactions button on your screen, you can raise your hand to ask a question, or you can either put it in the chat. So please, if anyone has a comment, obviously we're getting into debate about vaccines, and that could be, there could be a lot of debate there, but please, if you have a specific question about the presentations, to clarify, or ask anything of the Xavier as the presenter, or Allo as the respondent, please raise your hand.
I would like to intervene. It will leave time for people. Okay, you already, I see that.
Yeah, okay, so we'll go for, I saw Victor and then Philip. That's the order I saw it in.
Yes, thank you very much. Dr. Moyet, thank you for your wonderful presentation. All the things that concerning the COVID-19, who should we believe? In taking a claim for your presentation, should we believe the government? Should we believe science? Or should we believe the religious leaders? Religious leaders, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Oyumi, for your question. Well, that's a very simple question, but a very difficult one. I guess that it has to do with trust and belief, and obviously it's going to be a difficult one. But from what I said, it's clear that it's going to be very difficult for the people to have trust and faith into the political authorities because of the past. I've been trying to elaborate a bit on this. I am very sorry also, by the way, I'm going to answer to Dr. Allo because she read the sentence about the fact that Nigeria was a failed state. It's not my own contention. I guess that I said exactly that it's a narrative. Two narratives about Nigeria are of interest. So the problematic of a failed state is not that I adhere to it, but it's there in the air. It's very difficult to try to look at the political economy of Nigeria today without reference to this. Now, okay, I would not answer in a very forward way to your question. It's not either the public health or the pastors. Myself, I'm not a born-again Christian. I was not born in Nigeria, but I got a lot of critical, critics to make to the official public health. And when I've shown this picture of the man who said that poor Europe is going to be vulnerable, it was with a bit of irony. When I said that, I strongly believe that it's a bit paradoxical, to say the least, to talk about Europe vulnerability in front of this pandemic. So more research, and I hope that more consensus, collective agreements may arise. At the moment, we have a strong disconnection between the church and the public health authorities. It should not last forever, hopefully. Well, we'll see.
Okay, Philip, your question.
Yeah, thank you very much, colleagues, for this very exciting presentation and response. I'm wondering, is there any, or do you see any development within the, especially within the Pentecostal churches, in terms of their attitudes towards public health? I mean, Adeboye was one of the, was very critical of this whole thing in the beginning, but then was criticized and somehow changed his line. And we also see similar developments in the South African contexts, where Pentecostal leaders were very much advocating conspiracy theories and then very much engaged in a public health approach along with the government. So can this kind of shift be observed in the Nigerian context as well?
Thank you for your question, colleague. Well, I'm not familiar with the South African context, but there are many connections. Obviously, even the Church of Chris Oyakhilome is present over there. And about the evolution of the position of the church regarding these issues, I cannot be very optimistic. Obviously, with time, it seems that the distance is rather increasing between the church authorities and the political or public health authorities. It might have to do also with the general political climate. I don't know how it's going to heal in the future. It's difficult to assess. Maybe more connections is needed, because what I see on ground is a lot of people, they say, well, those church, they're not really helping the matter. They have those positions about a conspiracy theory, and they reject in block their influence, which I see as problematic from a public health perspective. In the past, there were a lot of problems when the immunization came into the north. Finally, it was solved because Nigeria is now a free country from this perspective. There is no polio anymore. But it was possible to reach that result through an ongoing conversation between the public health authorities and the churches and the traditional leaders. So I guess that through a constructive dialogue, solutions may be found. But there is also the need to reassess or to understand, as my colleague Dr. Allo said, is it a threatening reality for the African or the Nigerian population as such? It seems to me that there is also a disconnection in the perception of the gravity of this pandemic in the eyes of the actors themselves. Anyway, we need to talk. I'm more.
And now we have a question from Mujan Momen.
Thank you. I wanted to just dig a little deeper into Allo's response to this presentation. When we hear that that the COVID rates and COVID death rates in a country like Nigeria are not very high, the usual narrative is that, well, they're just being underreported, that the Nigerian public health system just doesn't have the capability of recording, diagnosing and recording the true number of COVID deaths. But it seems to me that even if that was the case, you should see a rise in the overall death figures from this year compared to, say, 2 years ago, so that you can get some sort of an idea of how many deaths are occurring in relation to the previous years, as it were, and whether there is any rise and so on. So I'm just wondering, it's slightly tangential to the main point that you're making, but it does interest me to see whether there is actually this low death rate from COVID in countries like Nigeria is due to underreporting, or it is an actual phenomenon. There is less death in African countries than in European and US, North American countries.
Allo, do you want to?
Dr. Allo?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Mojan. Actually, you are correct. Belinda Gates also made she also was of this opinion that the reasons why we have low cases or reported cases of COVID-19 was because of poor testing, that Nigeria and Africa do not have the capacity to test. And then there's also issues with statistics and with data gathering. That could be true. But like you said, when we make comparisons, and when we look at the happenings within the country, I tell you, we might not be perfect, but I think the public health agencies in Nigeria, talking about the Nigerian Center for Disease Control, they are actually trying their best when it comes to contact tracing and testing. And when they actually wanted to test, they looked at cities that has the highest prevalence, talking about Lagos, Abuja, and Ogun State. So they focused their testing in that area. And I think they've been doing a good job. So if there are cases of deaths, we will have heard in the news. The radar would have picked it up. So I don't think that that is an issue at all. And I still stand by my statement that I don't think that COVID-19 is a public health emergency for Africa. Donor agencies should be looking at sponsoring research around finding out why we Africans are, well, resistant to the virus, why it is not prevalent in Africa. Thank you.
Okay,
Yes.
thanks. Okay, Xavier, I'll pass you for one. We're at time, so people might start dropping off, but if you could give your final summing up, that would
Okay, well, I'm going to wrap up very fast, but to add to this issue, I guess that even during the presentation I referred to it, I said that maybe the statistics are not reliable, but from another angle, it seems that maybe there is herd immunity. A lot of people, they have been exposed to this sickness and they developed antibodies. So it's true that more research is needed in this area. And like other countries, I'm thinking about Madagascar. It seems that, well, a lot of people, they have been, dealing with this COVID, but in different ways. So we need to understand why also. Well, that's all.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So we've surfaced a lot of the ongoing issues, the tensions, the suspicions, the mistrust. This is all things that we've been thinking about in religious responses to COVID-19 this whole year. And it's of course ongoing. I think what we're hearing overall is that there is a need for more research. That research should be with African scientists, with African public health specialists, with African religious studies scholars, African religious leaders, and looking at the needs and issues coming from the specific country context rather than Western imposed agendas. To summarize a very large discussion in one sentence, hopefully does it some justice, but obviously this is an ongoing conversation, and we're happy to host the beginning of the discussion today. As ever, this recording will be posted online, so you can share it amongst other colleagues. Thank you very much to Dr. Xavier Moyet and to Dr. Allo Tolulope for your time and your presentations today. And we will be, I'm now completely failing to remember the date of the next session, but it's all on the website and we will be emailing you about it too. So we look forward to meeting in May. I think it's the 13th of May. So that's our next session. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good rest of your day or evening. Goodbye.